I go down to Florida Southern. I find whenever they got a nice piece, even if I don't need this at the time, I'll generally buy it. As I was also telling Daniel, I keep a framer's saw, one of those with really coarse teeth, sitting in the back of my SUV. So if this is longer than it'll fit, I'll just cut it into pieces right then. So the other thing is, when you buy something like this, you may find something that's like this. This is probably 14 inches wide, which is pretty good for cherry. You might find something that's 14 inches wide, but it doesn't mean that the grain will be well centered, all right? So this is one of those times that, depending on who you're making the anniversary gift for, you may decide, I'm going to sacrifice some of the wood. Rather than going for the largest possible item, I'm going to do the prettiest item. And so you're going to move your center line to where the is in the center of the grain. So you can see this is pretty close. It's probably, I don't know, maybe a quarter inch off of the center, but it'll look pretty good, I think, when it's after it's turned. Okay, so you want to get that in that cathedral grain. You want to get it, and so if you pick up a board where the cathedral grain, that center is over here, you're going to understand that you're not going to have as pretty a bowl when you're done as if you can find a board where it's closer to the center. Right? Because this is dry and finished lumber, I can use a screw chuck for this. I'll very often use this thing. Right? This just screws on to your spindle, and it's a permanent screw chuck. The problem with this is this bearing surface is very small. For a 14-inch platter, I'm thinking you're going to get too much vibration. So I will tend to use a chuck. Not that I have a lot more, but it is bigger than this thing is. I also use spacers. Okay, this is going to hold plenty good, even though I've got a couple of spaces in there. Because when you're dealing with 8/4 lumber, you only have so much depth to deal with, because also you're going to be taken away from it because you're going to be doing a recess in the bottom. So preserving depth is something you want to consider. So the first thing I'm going to do is make it round. At least that's the plan. Okay? So now I'm going to come back. It's not exactly smooth. It's got a bump over here and a bump over here, so I'm going to do a shear scrape. The only place I really need to worry about it is really up here anyway. And in fact, I can come back and I am getting quite a bit of vibration. Now I could use 3-inch jaws and put a screw in that. My problem with when I do that, again, on a 14-inch it may not be too big a deal, but on some of these smaller ones, if you're going to do a recess and do expansion chucking, you want at least an inch around that so you don't split it out when you expand into it. And on some of those smaller ones, that would bring my foot out too far. So I tend to use this. But on a 14-inch, I don't know, maybe I'd think about that twice. Looks like I have a little check here, so let me cut it one more time. That's pretty good. Now, if I'm going to do a bead, the bead has to is coming off of this side, right? So to give myself a reference point, I'm going to want to get this edge down to the depth that reflects the height of the bead. All right, so here, I'll come on this side. Not so easy for you now. So what I'm doing is I'm just reducing that thickness here. And so what I'm doing is now the difference between this height and this height is going to be the height of my bead. Now I don't have to take care of doing that face now. All I have to do is get myself a reference on this edge for what that bead's going to require in terms of real estate. And I have a defect here, so I'm going to have to go in here anyway. All right. So
are you also having to decide where the bead is going to be?
I don't have to do that until I flip her around.
Okay.
All right? So right now, all I'm really doing is figuring out, I'm going to have to turn from the bottom to the rim, and I need to know where the top of that rim is, and the top of that rim is the top of this blank minus the height of the bead. All right? So what that really is going to say is that when I go to turn that, that's where I'm going to bring that curve up to, all right? But I got some stuff to do first. I don't need this at all. So now, what I need to do is figure out for my chuck mounting where that's going to be, and get myself right. So I've established what my recess is going to be. I usually cut this, started anyway with a parting tool. And I don't want to go particularly deep. Again, the deeper I go here, the shallower the bowl part of the bowl is going to be. And I can keep walking that across, but mostly I use this, which is a box scraper. All right. You see that? few on its side. Pick up the angle. All right? Now, as I said before, I want at least an inch. I want at least an inch thickness between the inside of the recess and out here. Because if you make it much thinner, you can split that out once I start taking wood away from here. But I also notice when I'm doing that we aren't particularly flat across there. So I'm going to go and flatten that out a little bit.
What speed are you running?
I'm not running very fast. I would like to 1200. I will say one thing that you will find about kiln-dried cherry is it's definitely more brittle than cherry you get at home from a tree you picked up along the side of the road. All right, that's better. So now you have the question of how big do you want the foot? And part of that is going to be in your design. How artistic do you want? How functional do you want it? Are you going to put it so that it's all heavy with fruit and there's going to be fruit out to the edge where it may want to tip, then you might want to come out farther. On a bowl, on a regular bowl, the classic rule of thumb is 1/3, and on a platter, 1/2. So this is more of a shallow bowl, and I would say 1/3 is a pretty good foot for me. So I'm going to make my foot about here. All right. Now, so now the only thing I really need to do is figure out. Well, I'll do one thing first. I'm going to identify that. I don't want it to come square up from that foot into the OG. So what I want to do here is put just a little bit of a curve in it, a little bit of a bend, and that's so it starts to flow right off of that base, okay? I can also sit here now and put in beads in here, do whatever I want into this base right now, okay? I could put in, let's do a couple of decorative lines. But you can do whatever you want to here on the base right now. And so now I've defined where I'm going to start my underside from, and I've identified up here where I'm going to end it. So what I'm going to do is divide this into thirds. All right? And now, what I'm going to do is make a cove from this curve out to here. All right? So I'm going to nibble off the corner first. Sorry. So I'm getting pretty close up here. I'm a little further away down here, so I'm going to work down here. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little bit of a shear scrape, so I'm going to drop the handle, almost close it up, and ride on that lower wing. And I can see that right here, where I have a bump, here I have to make it smoother in. I have a little bump here, so. Okay. Oh, I got some pretty good tear on right there, that's for sure. So let me go back and deal with that. Again, that's one of the things about dealing with kiln dried cherry. Okay, I need to get this up here. This is all going away anyway, but I need to work on, where's that right there? And again, on a piece this big, I'm thinking now, you know, a 3-inch chuck jaws would have been a really good idea. All right. And now, what I need to do is I look at this and say, what's half of that distance from this here where I'm taking off from the rim? And that's where I make the bead. All right, I made the cove, and now I make the bead that's going to go from here to that spot. And then you just feather them in together. Feather them together. Let me get down here. And you're always looking at the horizon. All right.
Well, can we see the top? See if we can see the shape?
Sure.
What do you mean by horizon edge?
I'm looking here,
Oh, cool.
not at
Thanks.
the cut.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Because what I'm really looking for, I don't want any high spots. I don't want any bumps. And I want that to flow right from that foot all the way out to that edge on it with a nice smooth curve. All right, and one new thing I did buy in Portland after watching Rudy was a negative rake scraper.
See the other one? I can't get a good shot on either one. See, it doesn't show.
Okay. So there's my outside. I am going to do a little sand. And lately I've been using these purple things from Ken Rizza.
What grit did you start at?
120.
Okay.
Get a fresh one on. Turn on the well, I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna sand through all the grits. You get the idea. I'll be able to sand this, I'll leave the chucking base on so I can go sand it some more at home.
That was a lot of that one you had to turn on with the stick.
Okay? So, pretend that that's sanded and smooth. I got the shape that I wanted. I got the recess cut. I know where I'm going here, so now I'm going to take it off the screw chuck.
Is the height of that foot about half what the recess is?
Say again?
Is the height of the foot about half what the recess is, so you're deeper than the 1 inch with your recess?
This is about 1/8 of an inch deep.
Right, but where's it, the difference between,
This wall and here.
yeah, but the depth of the foot,
I don't want to go too deep when I'm putting in the screw or when I'm drilling that hole. All right. So now comes the question, is what do I want to do with this? All right? Do I want to make this like one of those commemorative plates? Do I want to make this wider so I can play with it and do some painting and stuff on it? So I think, yeah, that's what I want to
Just
do.
go wide.
I'm going to go wide. So I think right about here is where I'm going to do it. So I need to level all this off here. Again, drop the handle, close up the
It looks like that last inch is flexing a lot.
Yeah, it is. This is a big piece to be on here, but that's just the way it is. So I have to be careful when I'm out here that I'm not putting that much pressure on that way. And right here I can see, it's one of the nice things about having tangential light. You can, with the shadows, you can see that right here I have a bump right here. Okay. So again, I have some tool marks I need to sand out, but now, what you would normally do if you were going to decorate this with a painting technique like the iridescent paints or do something like that, all right, you don't really take this out yet. Okay, you do the painting first, and then you'll come back and cut out the inside. All right.
Why is that?
Well, one, because you're running steadier, less vibration. Not that you're going to put a lot of junk on here with paint, but that's the real reason is you're going to have to deal with it again anyway after you paint it.
Okay.
Particularly if you're using something like. Thanks.
Right here. Future reference.
If you use something like the Joe Sonia paints or something like that, and in fact, so many of these painting techniques, you have to apply a coat of lacquer first. For the Joe Sonias, or if you're using iridescence, it's black first. And then you do, for that, you do a couple of coats of black, and then you do a couple of coats of clear, and then you apply the paint. But for many of these things, you're not going to put the paint directly on a bare surface. All right, you want to put down a coat of lacquer first, and you're putting your paint on the lacquer. All right.
Rather than wood, it's just something pink right here.
Yeah, right. So you want it, especially if you're doing techniques like the centrifugal painting, that Barb was talking about, okay?
His name
Now,
is
one of the
Steve.
things reading, and his website is Stuart Farini Woodturning. .co.uk.
Oh,
And this is a guy, you know, people have seen an awful lot of the cloud painting with, you know, the Joe Sonia paints. Or now they have them here, not the Joe Sonia, but they have the,
Here it is.
yeah, the chroma colored, whatever ones here. And the centrifugal painting, he probably has 20 different techniques he has done on rims like this, on shallow bowl rims. So I don't like a lot of them, but some of them I think are pretty neat. So if you want to check it out and see what is available to you, go ahead and check out his website. Now what I will do here is, in fact, I'm going to cut it out, but I won't take it, I'll make it like this bowl is going to be shallower than it'll end up, because I'll take it home and cut it deeper. But I want to show you how I do this, because this part is not rocket science. Oh, I do want to do one other thing first. This is just a 50-50 shellac alcohol. And all I really want to do here is I want to get some protection on this backside
Could
if I'm
you-
going to do any painting.
could you use a sanding sealer on that?
You can. This is essentially is sanding sealer.
But that's shellac, right?
It's just got something.
Yeah, sanding sealer is very often shellac as well. And because this is 50-50,
Yeah,
it dries
sanding
very
sealer is
quickly.
No?
And so that'll give me, I'll usually put a couple of coats on there, because what that does is it'll give me a little protection if I have overspray. It's denatured alcohol from Lowe's or whatever. So now, I'm going to start, let's say I'm pretending this is painted, and sanded and painted and all that, and now I want to start taking out the center of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is determine the width of my bead. All right. So again, because I want to come in pretty straight down, you have to see how far
I'm
over
never
here
gonna
I
get
need
it.
to go with my gouge. And that has defined for me the width of what that bead will be. Now I can come back and say, that too shallow? Do I need to come in squarer? All right, I think I need to come in squarer. So I'm going to give myself a little room. All right. now I can come back and wait some of this. Now, before I go crazy, I want to give myself an idea of how much depth I have to play with. Okay. So I have about a little over a quarter of an inch I can play with there. Now, one thing about, if you want to do this for using a laser engraver, now the whole trick of this is to make this bottom flat, not scooped, all right? Because the laser is an optical system, all right? And think about it as an inkjet laser, same way. If your paper is in your printer like this, if one end is closer to the nozzle, it's going to be fatter than the places where it's farther away. It's the same thing with the laser engraver, all right? So that you have, for the laser engraver, you have to have a flat surface in order for you to get a nice constant cut. So, should have plenty of room there. Yeah, I mean, I still got a quarter-inch depth I can go. I'm not going to take it all the way. Remember, I said I'll just show you how you do that. I'll do one more little cut. Yeah, I like that. So that's how I would sand it, or now I would sand it. Now, the other thing is, though, I don't have a bead yet. I just have this blob here. All right. So what I'm going to do here is take a spindle gouge. And I'm making the bead with this. Now, one of the things I want to do, you can see I haven't gotten all the top yet because this is fatter than it is here. But I did come down and make a sharp cut. I'm going to come across that with the spindle gouge and cut into that corner because I want a nice bead cut there. So as I drop it down, I gotta raise the handle pretty good. And then I can see it here, and I'm gonna come across and cut into that corner. And that's gonna give me that bead. I have a little,
But Ed, if you've already painted it, you scrape a whole lot of paint.
oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, let me go back.
That
and-
one, that came from you.
Yeah, let me
Say it
go
louder.
back and do that.
Was right.
So, right, if I have painted this, obviously I can't do this, I
Go
can't
back
cut
and
across
finagle it
back
like
into
that,
here.
okay.
So, what I'm doing, this is painted all the way up to the bottom of that bead where I roughed out that roughed out bead. Then all I'm doing is taking this spindle gouge and I'm coming across here, and if you can see this, as I'm making that turn for that bead, I'm raising the handle and I'm just coming straight down into that. All right? And so what I'm doing there is I have not touched this painted surface yet. All right? And I'm just going to come right back, right into there and cut to the edge of that paint. Now, what I needed to do was prep all this ahead of time so that when I'm painting, I had a nice clean surface that I was going to be able to cut into down here. And so let's say before I paint, I have a nice clean surface. I'll make that bead and cut down into that surface, and there's nothing to contact the paint that's over on here. All right? All right, and there's another thing. You really need to soften these edges. And you can soften them with a gouge if you feel lucky. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no chance of a catch. You know, you're out here, you don't have much weight in the center, it's pretty thin out here. Yeah, well, it's easy to get a catch there. And you can just go through all the grits. Again, think about that ahead of time. If you're going to paint to the rim, do this before you paint. All right? If you're, sometimes what you do is you paint, but you leave a natural wood border. You can do that in both cases, all right? That's a little trickier to set up, obviously. I've done it with using masking tape. You put masking tape over the whole thing, and then you use a parting tool to cut through the masking tape to give you a sharp edge, all right? But always dealing with masking tape, you know, you can't use very, very fluid materials because they want to seep under. All right, so that gives you an idea. I mean, obviously I didn't sand this, it needs more work, this will need to be deeper, but that's basically the strategy for doing one of these things. And so now you've got yourself you know, you've got a pretty good canvas to play with, and you can do a bunch of stuff. You can do wood burning on here, you can do, one of the things, there was another one I had to bring, I didn't bring it, where I've used the chainsaw on a proxon, all right, while it's running. This is running this way, and I just run that across here, and it cuts a spiral, cuts on it. You can do it like Jimmy Clues has done it, and use spirit dies, and just dye it, especially if you have a nice figured piece of wood that you want to do. So there's a lot of things that you can do to this. If you do it with dyes, okay, that's a little different than doing it with paints. If you do it with an airbrush, that's different than doing it, you know, straight out of the bottle with a brush. It depends what you feel you're good with and what you can have more control doing. The issue for a lot of this stuff is that the transitions to the edge and what you want them to look like. And if you, let me bring that one over here, I'll show you. So actually what I would do, what I'll do when I go home is I'm going to sand up this and make sure it's really nice and flat. I am going to put, if I decide to do it with iridescence, I'm going to use black lacquer. If I'm going to do it in another paint technique, I will do it in clear lacquer. And I'll put a couple of coats on here and get this nice and smooth and level to put paint on top. All right? So you can see what I did here. I painted the whole thing, all right? But I left the rim wood. All right? So the paint goes right up to the edge. I could just as easily have painted this whole thing and then just take a little cut after it's painted and had a natural wood edge all the way out to this, this little cut mark. All right? I could do the same thing here. All right? So then I have a band of paint with wood on both sides. In this case, I took it all the way to the edge and then just sanded it back. There wasn't too much overspray because this is you put this on by hand. I didn't have too much paint on here, so I was in pretty good shape. I just sanded the rest of that paint over. And what I was talking about before, I brought the paint all the way into here, into that rough bead that I had, and then just did that final turn. And as I did with that spindle gouge, I just brought it down right dead into that corner. And you can see I didn't take any of that paint off at all. It just came right to that edge. Okay, and then I cut 2 grooves. And the grooves I cut, not like I did the grooves on the back of this. All right, that I just threw a skew up against and cut it. All right, you don't want to do that when you've got paint, because now you've got an extra paint on the surface. All right. And now you can chip that paint out maybe or something. So you want to cut this. And you cut it the same way you cut into this corner. You take a spindle gouge and at a very steep angle, you cut in from one side, flip it over, come in on the other side. Right? And so that way you get 2 nice cut grooves out of it. All right. So that's this basic thing. Now I'm going to show you one other technique here. So I put on, after I painted that, got that one painted, I put on probably 2 or 3 coats of clear lacquer. All right. So here's where I was with this. Yeah. Question?
No,
Oh, yeah.
that's the painted version.
Yeah. So now I'm here. All right, and I painted this surface with black lacquer. All right. So this has 2 coats of black lacquer on it, and then has a coat of clear on top of the black.
Brushed it out, brushed it, sprayed it.
No, spray can, rattle can. And the reason you do that, all right, is that, well, the reason for the black, and probably all of you heard this by now, that the paints, the iridescent paints are white. They don't show color until they're on a dark surface, all right? Now I'm talking about the paints like out here are the Joe Sonia paints. You can buy iridescent airbrush paints, which I've used, and they're colored, all right? But they don't have the same reflective power, phase shifting as the things like the Joe Sonia do. So, what the Joe Sonias look like. This is what the chronograph looks like. I just had this one, so I've been using that gold instead of using the gold from the Joe Sonia.
Is there a difference in the luminescence between this chromocraft and the Joe Sonia?
I've only, done the two golds, and I haven't seen any.
Okay.
The thing is with they're too thick coming out of the bottle to use directly on here. All right. So you have to thin them down. Now, you can be like I often am, where more is not too much, and you can put on a lot of colors. Really, you probably only need to have 3 colors on here. You don't need to do a whole lot. And you know what? I'm going to use, I've not used the red before, or the green.
Which brand are you using?
This is Joe Sonia.
Okay. Red comes out pink.
Yeah, okay. And I've used that is blue and turquoise and purple, I think, with some gold. So I think I'm going to use red and green and gold on this one. All right? Now, you can go buy some dilutant, at Michael's or at Hobby Lobby, some Liquitex or whatever, and it's going to cost you about $8 for a bottle this big. Or you can go to Home Depot and buy Floetrol, and Floetrol is what they use to control the spreadability and flowability of commercial wall paint, right?
What?
And so this is $15 worth, but what people, I don't know if any of you are into the painting scene now, but one of the things that's really popular is called acrylic pour painting. And this is, well, Kat and Don took their class in that, and this is what you use to dilute that stuff. So I had this around. So I put it in the bottle so I could get a little bit better control. So as you can see, that's red. I know that because the bottle label says red. All right?
You're all right.
And this
You're good.
is green. Very different. All right, and then I'm going to put some gold in here too. Oh, looks a lot different to me. So, what I'm going, you can mix up to a 40% of the Floetrol with it, I'm not gonna do quite that much. But you can see, or you can't see. That's red.
And what type of consistency you want there?
You want it not so, I mean, you want it thin enough that it won't stick in necessarily in one spot. But you don't want it necessarily to drop more than that. Okay, did you see that? It's flowing where out of the bottle it's not going to even flow. Now the other thing is you don't have to limit yourself to just iridescent paints. I mean, you can use all kinds of acrylic paints. You can use, you just won't have the same effect, you know, but you'll have nice colors on there. People are just hot on this because Tim Yoder did such a good job of spreading the word around about the cosmic bowl. All right. And so, here's my surface. It's been prepared. And now, I'm going to be really careful about putting this on. You can see that there's a little redness starting to show.
And we can.
And green.
And this one's a green. Okay. And now I'm going to put on some gold.
When you're doing this, do you usually always put the gold on top, or? is
You
that
know,
the-
I just have.
Okay. Will the surface be covered?
Yeah, I'm going to cover it. But I'm not done with it. You know, that's not how it's going to end up drying. Because now comes the next thing. The one thing about this is I was really looking for some 18-inch wide stuff. But you got to buy 100-foot rules.
Oh.
All right? All right. So now, I'm just going to be putting, I'm making these little twists with my fingers. All right. And now I want to take it off nice and slow. and crumble this up and do a little accenting.
So you're getting texture out of that Jimmy doesn't get when he did his platters, right?
He does dye.
Right, but I
This
mean,
is paint.
because you, that's not,
His is in the wood, mine's on the surface.
right, it's also a lot more viscous though, so you're gonna
Yeah,
get,
yeah.
you're gonna get some figure to that.
Right. But it'll dry fairly smooth when it dries. Now, that's obviously going to take longer to dry than we got. So I'm hoping I can speed it up a little bit.
If you wanted your outside rim to be black, could you wipe it off now?
Yeah.
Take it down.
Or you can do like Jimmy does. After he's done, if he wants it outside black, he takes a magic marker. I don't want to turn that too fast because then you have a centrifugal bowl. The centrifugal bowl, let me do that, talk about that just a little bit first. Centrifugal bowl, you tend to dab the paint around the hub here, okay? And you turn it on. But that one is really dependent on viscosity. So you can control it two ways. You can control it by turning up the speed. That's a little less controllable than you might want. I don't know if you ran into that. If you turn it up,
Put a bucket over it.
yeah. So, well, yes, you definitely want to protect your leg. But the way it's most classically controlled is you start to get it to move, and you take a spray bottle of water, and you spray the water on it. And that'll loosen it up enough, and you can control how many spritzes do I give it, and you can watch it start to move. So as this begins to dry, the white will go away. Everything will start to set up. And preferably you leave this overnight. You know, you won't be playing with it too much.
Does that help?
Green, black, and
Not
white.
gonna get as much color.
Yeah, we'll fix that.
When I was a boy, when you mixed red paint and green paint, you got black paint.
No.
So that made me wonder if you use
Doesn't
red
matter what you
green,
use,
same color.
no,
No,
we
it's
use
just
it, it's just comes out pink. We're not happy with it.
Just add a little bit more
Now, what are you adding? Are you adding red or
purple.
purple? Okay.
Okay, so now I want to texture that in. I didn't use any Floetrol on it, so
That'll be all right. Probably get a real nice purple on that one.
I've not tried drying this in front of an audience, so I have no idea how quick this is going to take. If you don't like it, all right, if you really don't like it and it's got a lot of paint on it, you can't put more paint on top of it. Why? It's not dark. you've got to take that off and put black paint down again.
How do you take it out, like, just a sheer cut or something?
Yeah. And you can see that the colors are starting to set here a little bit now. Most of that white's starting to go away down in here.
Swear it looks white. Is it?
You know, the gold is actually starting to show up some. I didn't see it before.
You can really see purple here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can start to see the green in the back and the gold here,
Yep.
and green and gold here, and purple. So this has to dry some, all right? But this is going to have a different look than the other one I did, which had a lot of those little like
Yeah.
curlicues in them because I was spinning it with my finger with the saran wrap. This is more texture with pouncing with the crinkled up saran wrap. But this is not ready for prime time. All right, you have to, you'll have to wait till it's dead dry, and then put a couple of coats of spray on clear lacquer on it, and let it dry in between. But you can see the colors are really starting to come through now. Should I be brave and do it?
Sure.
No,
No.
no, because you're gonna sling the sawdust.
Thank you. Good thought. That's what we need is iridescent paint line right up the middle there.
Well, that,
Sawdust in
shaving
your paint.
sawdust in the paint, you can't beat it out.
Unless you're.
So I think you'll be able to see colors better this way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So you can, it's beginning to dry, and the surface is getting pretty flat. Where it's white,
Looks like a Monday,
it's
doesn't
still
it?
wet, all right? So I have to be really careful. But you can see that it's not exactly the same as that other platter, but I had some of the swirls underneath, and I just did the crinkling on top, and then I just dabbed the purple paint. So there are places where I got more purple here than I do over here, so it's not perfectly balanced, but that's the kind of way you do that application.
What makes it unique?
Yeah, sure.
If you didn't like that, could you overspray it with black instead of taking that off?
It depends on how smooth the surface is. If the surface is smooth, yeah, go ahead and do that. And in fact, I did that. I didn't always cut it off and start from scratch. But when I've done them a couple of times, and you can usually get pretty close. So my issue in the first, I did two problems in the beginning. One is I put on a lot of paint the very first time. And when I put on a lot of paint, I ended up with a lot of the white stuff that wasn't, when it dried, it was still white because it hadn't been on top of any dark paint. All right?
There you go.
Think about that.
Yep.
And so it's going to dry white fine. Then I had some where I put too much Floetrol in. I was just pouring it from the big bottle. And I diluted it too much. And it would spread around and everything, but it didn't have the color to pop. And so I oversprayed those and did them again. But it's pretty amazing that in that, from 3 little things of white glob stuff, it turns into these colors, you know? And that was the first time I used the red, and I'm not very thrilled with that. The green is pretty nice. It's not that different than the turquoise, though. And you can see the turquoise in that other one. But I'm going to have to let this dry overnight, and then I'll put some finish on it. But I'm going to leave it over here so you can take a closer look at it.
I did one doing the glob.
Right.
And I'm twisting a little bit. I had the white. When it dried, it gave it a cloud effect.
Right.
You got the white, the blue.
Yeah, and in fact, I did a piece for a show the show was called Smothered in Blue. and it was just a big disc that I did, and I cut out the middle, put a collar in it, and put a glass eye in it on both sides. I called it Peeker, so it was a guy inside looking out. But yeah, it won first place in the show, and it was because of the colors. It was the blue and the purple and the gold, and I did the purple kind of around the hub, and then did more of the blue and turquoise as it faded out. And it was really well-received piece. So, Woodturners, I would say, in about another 6 months, people say, oh, still some of your paints, oh yeah. But we've still got about another 6 months that we can play with it before it becomes too passe. And there were a number of pieces in the instant gallery at the AAW that used that paint. And there were some pretty interesting things done with it. So, that's all I really have.